Good afternoon, folks. Um, welcome. You're here with the Training Institute and Bat World Sanctuary. We're really excited to have folks joining us today for the training, Why Give a Flying Fox About Bats? I'll be getting started very shortly as I allow folks to join in on the webinar. Thank you for being here. All right. So it's really excellent to have folks joining us this afternoon. My name is Celeste Gasparic, and I am the Director of Training and Impact with Community Nature Connection. And you are here for the Training Institute's community training called Why Give a Flying Fox About Bats? And we're really excited to have our trainer, Jessica Anderson, joining us. You'll get to meet her shortly. She's actually joining us from inside of a fruit bat enclosure at Bat World Sanctuary. But before we get started, I just wanted to introduce myself, Celeste. My pronouns are she, her. I am joining today from Tongva and Quiche Land, otherwise known as Northeast Los Angeles. And a couple of housekeeping items for today's session. Closed captioning is available for this training, and you can view the captions by clicking on the CC button on the bottom of your screen and selecting Show Subtitles. So if you are unfamiliar with our organization, Community Nature Connection is a nonprofit community-based organization that serves the Los Angeles area. Our mission is to increase access to the outdoors for communities impacted by racial, socioeconomic, and disability injustices. We do this by eliminating existing barriers through advocacy, community-centered programming, and workforce development. And the Training Institute is one of our programs that provides free community training, such as this one, as well as certification training opportunities that aim to increase knowledge, build skills, and increase representation in the outdoor field. And we will begin today's program by acknowledging the land on which CNC operates as the ancestral unceded lands and home of the Tongva, Gabrielino, Tataviam, and Chumash people. We recognize their continuing connection to the land, waters, and culture, and pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. CNC partners with local tribes as part of our efforts to expand equitable outdoor programming to all. And I'd like to go beyond just a land acknowledgement this afternoon by offering a call to action to support land back and tribal sovereignty by inviting you to make a donation to the Tongva Land Conservancy. And I'll drop a link in the chat for you all to check that out. So as folks have joined us for today, I would invite you to introduce yourselves in the chat. You can share with us your name, your pronouns, where you're joining us from today, what native land you're on, and if you're representing any organization, shout them out as well. We are going to be doing a Q&A at the end of today's session. And so I invite you, as any of your questions arise, to put those in the Q&A box. So put your intros in the chat, put your questions in the Q&A box so that we can keep track of those questions, and we'll answer those towards the end of the session today. And with that, I am very excited sharing to introduce today's trainer. Jessica Anderson is an alumni of the University of Texas at Arlington, where she graduated with honors and obtained her BS in biology. Jessica has always been an animal lover, but her love of bats began after witnessing a magical bat emergence at Carlsbad Caverns National Park. Shortly after this, she began volunteering at Bat World Sanctuary and her local botanical garden. And she also became a certified interpreter with Community Nature Connection. And now Jessica serves as Bat World's Director of Education. And we are so excited to have you here. Jessica, take it away.
Thank you so much, Celeste. I am going to start with saying I'm pumped. I am so ready for today. If anyone knows me outside of this program, you know that I talk about bats forever. I will talk about them for hours and hours on end. It's what I do at parties. So I'm just excited that I get to do it in this setting. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Like Celeste said, my name is Jessica Anderson. I'm the Director of Education here at Bat World Sanctuary, and I am tuning in live from the fruit bat enclosure. Now, most of you guys know that bats are nocturnal. They are awake at nighttime and then they go to bed during the day. However, as you guys may have heard with the protests in the background, some of our bats have zero respect for bedtime hours. So as you guys watch today, you might see some bats flying past the screen right behind me, or you might hear them talking to one another. And of course, as soon as I say that, they all decide to be quiet. But if you guys hear that, I just want you guys to know that those are the bats. We have about 400 of them here at the sanctuary within our care. And within this enclosure alone, we have about 300 to 350 short-tailed fruit bats, Egyptian fruit bats, there was one, a short-tailed fruit bat, Egyptian fruit bats, Indian flying foxes, the ones that have really, really big wings, and Jamaican fruit bats. So I'm really excited to start. If you guys do need to excuse yourself at any moment to go use the bathroom, get a drink of water, and then come back later, that is totally fine. Questions will be answered mainly at the end, but throughout the program, I may ask you guys to participate and send your answers in the chat. So if you guys see that I ask you guys a question, please feel free to answer using that chat feature. So I hope you guys are excited because I'm super excited. I am ready. Let me go ahead and start sharing my screen for you guys. And let's explore why we should give a flying fox about bats. First, I'm going to introduce myself a little bit further. I told you guys my name and what I do as my job, but I wanted to give you guys a little bit of background. And something that I do want you guys to keep in mind as we go through the program is this quote right here. And it's never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. So there's going to be a lot of themes throughout today and a lot of things that you guys might be able to do whenever you guys leave this program today. So I want you guys to know that even though you guys are maybe one person, I think we have about 22 participants right now, we can make a difference with the information that you will leave with today. But again, my name is Jess, and the reason why I fell in love with bats is whenever I went to that cave in Carlsbad Caverns National Park, like Celeste had mentioned earlier. Carlsbad Caverns National Park is in New Mexico, which it's gorgeous. If you guys haven't been, please take a trip over there, especially during the summertime, because that's whenever the Mexican free-tailed bats in that area go there to have their babies. So you will see them in large masses. I think this cave is about 200,000 bats, more or less, every single summer. And they fly out of their cave all at once. And they come back in at the awful hours of like 5 a.m. And I say that because that's whenever I watch them come back into their cave. So my husband and I, who are in this top picture, made our way over to Carlsbad Caverns. And we had just done Guadalupe Peak nearby the day before. So we were tired. We were exhausted, but I said, no, we have to go watch the bats. So we got up at 3 a.m., made our way there, and we sat down. We were the only people there. And I actually cried with how beautiful it was getting to see all those bats come together and just dive bomb into that cave at 100 miles per hour. So I keep saying 100 miles per hour because that is important. We usually get told that the fastest mammal on Earth is the cheetah. We've all been told this since we were little. And the reality is that, yes, the cheetah is the fastest runner. We're not going to take that title away from them. But the fastest mammal overall is going to be the Mexican free-tailed bat because they can fly at 100 miles per hour. We have them here in Texas. We have them in New Mexico, where I watched them for the first time. And you guys have them there in California as well. It's actually one of the most common species that you guys will see in your area. And it's just super cool. They're super expansive. They're also the fastest animal. And we'll get to talk a little bit more about them and what makes them so super special. Now, they are local to this area. And that's what made me fall in love. But then I was like, you know what? I need to find find out more information about them. I need to learn everything I can. It was like a bug had bitten me, and I needed to find out more. And lo and behold, during all of this research, I found that only an hour west from where I lived was this really cool place. It's not Disneyland, but it is pretty close. It's Bat World Sanctuary, the coolest place on earth, because they have dedicated over 30 years to rescuing, rehabilitating, and conserving bats here in Texas and all across the globe. It was started back in 1994, whenever Miss Amanda Lawler found one little Mexican free-tailed bat. She was on the sidewalk. It was over 100 degrees because it was in the middle of summer, and she was turning into a little bat crisp. It was so sad because it was so hot on the pavement. And at this time, Amanda thought that bats were vermin, that they were dirty, disease-ridden, all of them had rabies, but Amanda could not just let the bat die. It just wasn't in her. So she scooped up the bat with a little bit of newspaper and cardboard and brought her back to her home and did all of the research that she could to figure out how to save this little dying bat. Back in the day, there wasn't that much information on them. You couldn't even figure out how to rehab them. She was feeding her cream cheese and other items that were just in her fridge because that's what the book that she had said to do. Sunshine made it about 1 to 2 years, but along the way, Amanda found more and more bats and was able to talk to lots of zoologists, conservationists, veterinarians, and figure out how to care for more bats. And she ended up writing what's colloquially known as the Bat Bible, the rehabilitation book that all rehabilitators use and veterinarians use to this day. So she started with that one little bat, and now she has this giant enclosure. I mean, it's 3,000 feet, the one that I'm in right now. And we have saved hundreds of thousands of bats throughout the years. And I get to be a part of it now as the director of education. Now, the video that I'm pulling up right now, I'm doing so for a couple of reasons. Number one, this is part of what brought Bat World on the map, was this little bat named Little Drac. And I'm skipping towards the cool part of it because it's 4 minutes long. It is on our YouTube page if you guys want to watch all of it, but there is one part that I want you guys to see. It brought us on the map because this video went absolutely viral. You guys will see why. But we often think of bats during October, during Halloween. We think of them as scary, slimy, gross creatures. We often don't think of them as being, number one, our neighbors and us living with them all the time. And we often don't think of them as the cute and intelligent beings they are. This is Little Drac, a short-tailed fruit bat who was rescued from the pet trade. And he was an orphan. So little orphan Little Drac didn't have anyone to groom him, so we had to teach him how to groom. The little sponge that's in his mouth, it's how he was nursing on milk, because at this age, they can't lap up milk yet. So they have to have a little foam tip, and we slowly drop the milk onto their mouths. I'm gonna go over just a little bit further. So he was a little baby, but he did this one thing after each feeding to comfort himself. He would start grooming and he would rock himself to sleep. So it's crazy that we often think of bats as these scary, evil, like slimy, gross beings. In reality, they're super intelligent and they're super cute. And they're not just around during Halloween, they're around us year round. And we are going to get to meet some of our neighbors. I actually clicked the wrong button. Celeste and I were just talking about feeling rusty after not using certain programs for a while. And I feel like that was it for me. Move this out of the way. All right. But yeah, that was Little Drac. But you guys saw that video, which was super cute, right? But you could say, hey, Jess, why bats? You could be saving puppies, kittens, ponies, butterflies, literally anything that's cute. Why in the world would you touch a bat, handle a bat? Isn't that scary? Well, at first, I was a little wary of them until I learned a little bit more information. And bats are super essential. Someone has to do the job, right? They're super essential. They eat about 5,000 insects, every single one of them, 5,000 insects every single night. So when you think about it and you have a colony like the one that I saw that was about 200,000, Mexican free-tailed bats, they end up eating tons and tons of insects every single night. And what that does is, number one, it helps keep crops alive. We don't have things like the corn earworm moth eating up all of a farmer's crops. If we didn't have that Mexican free-tailed bat, we would be paying about $9 per ear of corn, which is crazy. Already, we have people who are struggling to keep food on the table. Our minimum wage is not going up and our housing is going up even higher. And food costs right now, with so much inflation, is going up. So if we didn't have bats helping us along the way, it could be a whole lot worse. So I do want you guys to keep that in mind, is that bats are integral to our survival, and they're not just around during Halloween. So food is number one. But number two is they help with the bugs. So over 33% of a bat's diet is just mosquitoes, an insectivorous bat, which is the ones that we have here in the US. And mosquitoes can carry lots of nasty things in them. They can pass down disease to us. Things like Zika. That's my little Zika guy. Or let's see what else is in this mosquito. Or West Nile virus. These are all from giant microbes, and I absolutely love them. Things like dengue fever and malaria. So they're eating all of these pesky bugs out of the sky, who are therefore not going to eat our food, and they're also not going to pass down disease to us. So bats are our friends. And if you don't like creepy crawlies like centipedes or scorpions, bats like the pallid bat, which you guys also have in California, are going to be your best friends because they love these creepy crawlies that are down below. Now, I hope that this is a yes for everyone, but in the chat, let me know if you guys have used any of these products. Please say soap, please say toothpaste and deodorant. If you guys have used any of these products today. I know I washed my hands a couple of times. I brushed my teeth this morning. I used deodorant this morning. Didn't do chewing gum today, but I did have chocolate and coffee and an aspirin. So if any of you guys have used any of these today, you guys not only used things that are given to us by bats, you are dependent on bats for your survival. And these are just a very short, condensed list of the things that we get from bats. We also get lots of life-saving medicines, and we don't even think about these things. I'm actually gonna close out. There we go. So we don't even think about these things, but we need them. We use bats every single day. Now, another question I get a lot is, Jess, are bats related to rodents? Because I see that they're cute, they're little, they're fluffy. So obviously they are just mice with wings, right? And the answer is no, absolutely not. They're completely different. Mice are going to, any kind of rodent usually is going to be lucky to have 1 to 2 years of life. And within this 1 to 2 years, they're going to have hundreds of babies, litters. Meanwhile, a bat can live, depending on the species, 20 to 30 to even 40 years. And they usually only have about 1 pup every single year. So those Mexican free-tailed bats that come together in that cave, those 200,000 bats, they're going to, each mom, have maybe 1. And that's if they're within reproductive age. So they're very slowly reproducing mammals. This is also why it's super important to protect them, because things like shutting them out of caves that they once used. For some bats, white nose syndrome is a huge thing, and we'll get to that a little bit more later. All of these things, and predators, they're all going to make a huge dent in their population. They won't be able to recover quite as quickly. So definitely something that we don't even think about. They're cute, they're fluffy, but they can live a very long time, and they don't reproduce very quickly. They're the slowest reproducing mammal for their size. They're in a whole order all of their own called Chiroptera. And I do want you guys to take that word with you today, put it in your pocket for later to impress all of your friends. Chiroptera. Chiro comes from the word meaning hand, like a chiropractor that works with their hands, and pter meaning wing, like a pterodactyl. So Chiroptera just means that your hands are your wings. And their skeletons, like their hands, are actually very, very similar to ours. If you guys see the one up top, a lot of those same bones are present in a bat's hand. They're just a little bit longer and slightly modified, but otherwise they're almost exactly the same, as opposed to a bird, for example, whose arm is kind of just shaped like this. They don't have all of our phalanges. Then they have feathers coming down to help them fly. Birds also have those hollow bones, which makes them a little bit lighter. Flight is easier. Bats have to fly with totally dense bones, which is absolutely crazy, but it's why they need to eat so much. And we will also talk about how much a bat has to eat. This slide right here, I thought about not keeping it because I usually use this for kids because it's more of like a sensory thing. But I've found that when I do these programs, the adults in the room usually like this slide more. So I'm going to keep it because it's so super cool. So a bat's wing, think about it. It's thin, it's elastic, it's stretchy. We do have a piece of skin on our eyelids that feels exactly the same. So if you've ever wondered and you've ever wanted to touch a bat's wing, just touch your eyelid. It feels exactly the same. And I know you guys are all at home touching your eyelid right now. We're like, oh, this is so cool. But yeah, so a bat's wing feels exactly like our eyelids. Now, this is where I will ask you guys to participate in the chat. Why do we think a bat may not want to hunt during the day? Why are we nocturnal? Why is that important? Too much competition. Yes, that is one reason. Thank you so much, Anne. More bugs. Yes, that's another reason. Oh my gosh, you're awesome. Yes, thank you, Alex. Awesome. And predators. You guys, did you guys get to see my PowerPoint before this? You guys got them all. So, so not as many predators, more bugs, less competition. Noise might be one of them. Absolutely. So all of these reasons will make them work the night shift. And just like people, I don't know if any of you guys maybe are night shift nurses or work security. If you guys work the night shift at all, you probably go in at night when everyone else is in bed, just like a bat would go out to hunt. And then whenever you come back home after a really long day and you are just tired, you're probably going to go in there and you're going to shut all of the blinds, make sure everything else is quiet around the house, and you're going to go to bed. This is why a bat, after they're done hunting at night, is going to go find a cave or maybe a pile of leaves, something nice and cozy to hide in. It's not that bats are afraid of light or that a light is going to make them burst into flames. It's that they are tired. It's time for bed. So they require someplace cozy and dark to go to sleep. So blind as a bat, let's talk about that. Bats use echolocation to find their food. All that is that they send out a sound that just goes off and it bounces off of an object and comes right back to those big ears that have lots of sensors on them, and they can figure out where that object is, how big it is, where it's flying to, and how fast it's flying. And sometimes they can even tell the makeup of what that is. So is it a dense object? Is it a hollow object? They can figure out all of these things, which they do with essentially just physics in their brains. It's so cool. Dolphins can essentially do the same thing, but bats are just especially good at it. Your insectivorous bats are going to use it much more often because their prey is flying around. Your fruit bats are going to rely on other senses like their eyesight and their sense of smell to find their food. Bats are also great pollinators, though. We often think about buzz pollination, like bees or butterflies doing the majority of the work, but bats are essential pollinators as well, especially for those flowers that open up at nighttime when all of your other pollinators are going to be asleep. Things like the coconut palm, bananas, agave, and vanilla would not even be possible if it weren't for bats. So who here uses any of these items? If you like bananas, I love bananas. We wouldn't have them if it weren't for bats. They're one of the sole pollinators for bananas. Do you guys like coconut? And a lot of us use coconut to cook. We use it in our cosmetics. All of these things, all thanks to a bat. Now, we did throw out a lot of things that bats might eat. We have a couple different types of bats out there. There are about 1,450 different species all across the globe, and they're all very different from one another. Pretty much all of them that we're going to have here in the US are going to be insectivorous. 70% of them across the globe are going to be insectivorous. In certain areas of the US, parts of Arizona, New Mexico, and even very far down in Texas and California, you're going to see some nectivorous bats. They're going to be feeding on things like agave, or in Arizona, like the saguaro cacti. And a very small percentage are going to be sanguivorous. Does anyone know what that one might mean? This is the creepy one that we all think about. These are your vampire bats. Now remember, there's 1,450 different species and only 3 fall under that sanguivorous category. Some of them can be carnivorous. They can eat fish, frogs, and sometimes even other bats. And then, of course, we have our fruit bats, our sky puppies, as some people call them. And that's where I am right now, is in the fruit bat enclosure. So if you guys have watched anyone fly behind me, those are different kinds of fruit bats, which we do not have here in the US, simply because we don't have the food for them. We don't have a bunch of mango and banana trees lying around. It'd be really cool if we did. Now, if you count places like Puerto Rico, which is a tropical island, technically still part of the US, then you will have fruit bats there, but not here in the main part of the US. Now, insectivorous bats can eat a lot of food. Remember how we talked about how they are the only mammals that can fly, and they do so with really dense bones? They need a lot of energy to be able to do this. So one little bat is going to eat about half their body weight every single night just to stay alive. This is about 1,200 mosquito-sized insects every single hour, or more or less about 5,000 insects every single night. And remember, whenever you have a huge colony of them, this is a great service for farmers, for our food, and to help lower the chance of disease. And bats are super intelligent. Right now in this enclosure, I'm actually going to turn the camera up just a little bit so you guys can see this. Bats play together. They're super curious. They use things like stuffed animals. This is like a little stuffed dog, I think is what he is. He's a little stuffed dog that hangs up from the ceiling. These behind me are different kinds of puzzles where we put treats inside, and bats like our Indian flying fox or Egyptian fruit bats will literally go in there with their hands. Remember, these are your Chiroptera hand wings. They will go in there and open the cup to get the treat inside. So they have to figure out how to do this. And it's a challenge for their brains, and that is necessary for them, because just like us, how we need things to do to keep us busy because we are so intelligent, otherwise we literally go insane. It's the same thing for them. So next time you go to a zoo, pay attention to the enrichment that they have. Sometimes they don't have any at all. And this is like a really bad problem. And this is why we do try to talk to zoos, to let them know, hey, these guys need this enrichment, just like chimps, just like dolphins, how we know they're super intelligent. Bats are the same way. And another thing I want you guys to know is there are those 1,450 different species of bats worldwide, and there's roughly about 5,000 to 6,000 species of mammals. That number keeps shifting as DNA research is done, but that means about 1 in every 4 species of mammals worldwide is a bat. And that's counting things like okapi, zebras, cows, sheep, anything that you can think of. About 25% or so of these mammals are always going to be some kind of bat. Here in the US, we're lucky to have about 47 different species. In Texas, for example, we have 33 of them, but you guys in California have a lot of different species as well. Most notably, the Mexican free-tailed bat, that's the most expansive. You guys have the canyon bat, the western red bat, hoary bat, and even like the little brown bat. You guys have lots and lots of different species that are even present here. Where I live in Texas, we don't have the western red bat, but we do have your eastern red bat, who is just his cousin. They look very, very similar. They have very similar roosting patterns, and we're going to get to meet one today. An eastern red bat. I don't have a western over here, but I do have an eastern. I am going to stop sharing my screen so you guys can see me a little bit bigger while I show you our eastern red bat, Gabriel. Now, Gabriel is a sweet flying Cinnabon. He doesn't fly anymore. Hi, Gabriel, what are you doing? He had a run-in with a pet dog, and it wasn't the dog's fault. The dog was just doing what he does and just exploring his backyard, but Gabriel had fallen out of a nearby tree. And this is little Gabriel. So the first thing that people notice about bats like Gabriel is his color. We often think about bats as black or brown, and they are surprised whenever they see, and this is a little mealworm for him, they're surprised to see little bats like Gabriel look so red, and they wonder how that would help him survive in the wild. Hi, Gabriel. So think about it this way. Bats like Gabriel are not going to hang out in caves. They're going to hang out in trees. They're foliage roosting bats. And if you're a foliage rooster, you're hanging out in a tree and the wind is swaying back and forth, are you just going to pause? Or he just decided to pause mid-worm. They usually hang by one little foot and they curl their tails around them. And in the breeze, they look like a dry leaf, or they might look like a pine cone, depending on where they're at and how they're hanging. So this is actually great camouflage. They're also especially fluffy, which is why they look like little puffballs, little cinnabons. And I'm sorry, I'm just like, he's just so heckin' cute. They have lots of extra fur to help keep them warm whenever they're hanging out in a tree. They're usually solitary. They're hardly ever going to come together with any of their friends unless he's trying to find a mate. That's the only time he will come together with another red bat. Oh, we dropped the worm. Oh no. Here we go. I'm going to give you one more worm and we'll put you up because we have more bats to meet. But yes, this is an eastern red bat, but you guys have his cousin in California, the western red bat. Oh goodness. Let me give you another worm for the road. Here you go. So that was little Gabriel. You guys also have little browns or canyon bats, and I don't have any of those species here, but I do have one that looks very similar, and that is the evening bat. So our little evening bat that I'm going to introduce you guys to today is Dixie. And Dixie, we are still trying to figure out her story. She tells us her story in bits and pieces, but she was found on the ground. It was kind of embarrassing for her actually, because most of her friends were flying around and she couldn't find her way back up. Somehow her wing became a little damaged, and that's why her fingers curl up this way. They're supposed to be tucked in like they are over here where you don't really see her fingers sticking out. But she usually has, are you leaving me already? But she usually has her fingers sticking out right over here. So we don't really know exactly what happened, Dixie, but we do know that you're very cute and we're happy to have you here because otherwise she would not have survived in the wild. We do give our bats permanent lifetime sanctuary if they're not able to survive. So they'll have lots of friends here and lots of food to keep them happy. Hello, my friend. So yes, once again, evening bats are not going to be quite as common in your area, but she looks kind of similar to the little brown, which you guys might find over there. Another bat that I would like to introduce you guys to today is one of my personal favorites, the ones that I personally fell in love with, and that's going to be the Mexican free-tailed bat. Now, Mexican free-tails are crevice roosting. We did talk about how Gabriel likes to hang out in a tree. Bats like Alfie actually like to hang out in really tight spaces with hundreds of thousands of friends typically. So this is a little Alfie. Now, Alfie has really big ears with lots of folds in them. And we're gonna get to see a better picture in a little bit. They have these little bumps along their ears. All of that is gonna help them echolocate. And they're called Mexican free tails because they have a little tail that extends right past their tail membrane. So they have a little piece of skin right over here along their booties, and his tail is missing the rest of it. He's missing a little tip right there. That's why it looks like a little nub, but his tail still extends further out, making it a free tail. The Mexico part of the name, the Mexican free-tailed bat, just tells us where they go throughout the winter months here, because they're here to have their babies. They migrate back and forth. Someone's just flying right behind me. So they migrate back and forth whenever the insect supply lacks over here. Whenever it's just a little bit too cold, they make those really, really long migrations back. But this is little Alfie. And his story is actually a really sad one, which I am going to clip notes for you guys because it's actually kind of makes me a little angry. So Alfie was perfectly healthy. He was a fine little bat. And he found his way into a warehouse nearby in town. And the manager of said warehouse saw Alfie and did not want him in there, which is totally acceptable. There are ways to very safely get bats out. But what he did was he proceeded to knock him down and then try to kick him out of the building with his heavy boot. So whenever Alfie came in, Alfie was completely bloated. His stomach was super distended. So much so that whenever we initially picked him up, we thought that he was a pregnant female. But we found out that this was not true. He is a male. But we thought this because of that belly initially, but he ended up being male, and all of that was just fluids from his internal injuries. We didn't think he would survive. But this little guy is a fighter. And even though he has some kind of bumps on his face and he's missing that little piece of his tail, overall, he has healed really well. He will never be releasable, but that's okay, because you have lots of friends here to keep you company and lots of food. He kind of became a little bit of a chunky bat ever since then. But that is Alfie's story. Now you guys do have bats like Alfie over in California. I am going to start sharing my screen one more time so I can show you a couple more pictures. So we talked about the Western red bat that you guys have. We haven't talked about the hoary bat. This is one of my favorite species. They are also a foliage roosting species. They hang out in trees. Now they have that beautiful frosted fur, which is where the hoary bat comes from, because the picture on the right is hoar frost. You guys can see the similarities on there. This helps them camouflage. I don't have a hoary bat to show you guys. We do have some here at the sanctuary, but they don't really love to be handled. So we respect their space. And instead, I am going to show you guys a short video of our hoary bat, Priscilla. And if you guys don't have your volume up a good amount, I would highly suggest that we do, because this is some great batty ASMR, just the little munchies. If you guys are in the middle of eating food right now, I apologize. Priscilla is going to be one of the largest kinds of bats that you're going to find, tree roosting wise anyway. There is a bat that's a little bit larger, and that is the mastiff bat. We don't really find them quite as often in my area, but in parts near LA, you might actually find mastiff bats. They're a little bit larger. And they look a little bit more like the Mexican free-tailed bat that I showed you guys. Their ears kind of form a bonnet over their head, and they're super cool. But besides the mastiff bat, the hoary bat is going to be one of your largest and the most beautiful that we have, in my opinion. They're super fluffy. They have all of that fur because, again, they hang out in trees, so they need to be able to stay warm. So these are all, oh, there's my face. These are all going to be kinds of bats that you find in your area. These are your neighbors. Then we talked about the Mexican free-tailed bat. And I do have a short video to show you guys. Even though we did get to meet one, I do have a short video because this one is super cute. And it does kind of help bring home the fact that bats are not evil, scary creatures. They have hearts, they're intelligent. What we often don't think about is that they need to have families. They need to have each other, families and friends, in order to survive. We had found a tiny little baby orphan bat. He was just born because he still had his umbilical cord attached to him. And we found him in an Ace hardware store. So we named him Ace. And whenever he came in, we actually didn't think he was going to make it, because whenever we found him, he was super severely dehydrated. And he had been away from mom, and he was maybe a day or two old. So we were giving him milk. I don't know if you guys noticed, there was that little sponge tip again, where we drip milk so that he can suckle on it little by little. But the next day we got a call from the same Ace hardware store. They had found mom, or what we presume might have been mom. And we put it together. It was clear right away that this wasn't just a random bat that we found. This was mama bat. They found each other and took to each other right away. Ace's mom, who we named Base, she was not able to produce milk because she was extremely dehydrated. So we helped her out. We kind of played mom with her and fed Ace. But other than that, they did get to hang out together, and she helped groom him and help him become his own grown-up bat. So they're super intelligent creatures. Bats are great mothers. They usually have that one baby every single year. So they spend a lot of time taking care of that baby. You can watch Mexican free-tailed bat emergences in a couple different areas around the United States. I watched them and in that cave in New Mexico, Carlsbad Caverns. You can also go to Yolo Bypass in Davis, California, which I know is a little bit of a drive for most of you guys, but I do see that they do bat walks there. So you can actually schedule a tour and they will guide you through and talk about the bats in a little bit more detail than I did today. I could talk about Mexican free-tailed bats all day long, but I'm keeping it short for you guys so we can talk about more things related to bats. Here in Texas, the most notable colony is the one under Congress Bridge, and it is the largest known urban colony of bats in the entire world. I think over 1.5 million every single year is what they clock it at. That's how many bats are under that bridge. Now at about 20 million, we have Bracken Cave. These bats have been going to this cave for hundreds of years, and they actually don't allow anyone, the public, I mean, to go into the cave just for safety reasons, but they do have a couple of times per year where you can get on a list to go watch the bats come out of Bracken Cave. That is still on my personal bucket list. I have not been able to see this emergence yet, but I hope to one day be able to experience 20 million bats coming out of the cave and just listening to them, because that is one thing that I remember from going to Carlsbad Caverns was the sound, because they're flying at about 100 miles per hour. So you can hear them going zoom, zoom right above you. And it's just absolutely exhilarating. It's so much fun. And one more thing I want to leave you guys with for the Mexican free-tailed bats. Remember that tail that sticks out, wiggles freely? Right below that, they don't have any fur. So what we are left with is this super cute bat booty, which is essential and it helps them out. It helps them stay clean and super hygienic because they hang out with lots and lots of friends and they're all packed tight together. But for us, for our purposes, it's just super cute. And if you guys don't follow us on Facebook or Instagram, we're Bat World Sanctuary on both of them. Every single Friday, we bless your timeline with a fresh Bat Booty Friday. So if you guys would like to have that on your timeline, on your feed, please follow us on Facebook or Instagram, where we do promise we will post one every single Friday. Now, we did talk about those neighbors that you guys have. We talked about the Mexican freetail. We talked about it a lot. We've talked about the Western red bat, the hoary bat. There are a couple different bat species that you will not find in your area at all. Using the chat feature, can anyone tell me what you may not find? Any guesses? Flying foxes? Yes, exactly. Thank you, Alex. Flying foxes is a really good answer. Does anyone else have any other suggestions? Vampire bats, exactly. Thank you so much, Carla. So you're not going to have your vampire bats or your fruit bats. So vampire bats, I think, are super cute. I don't know why we villainize them. Just look at that face. It's adorable. Now, they are super cool creatures. They only feed on blood. That's it. And they do this by creating a very small, tiny incision into their prey. Their saliva makes it to where the prey cannot feel anything. And it's also going to thin the blood. So instead of it being like a smoothie, it's more of like an easy to drink juice. And they take tiny, tiny amounts. They never want to kill their prey. This wouldn't be efficient for them, right? So they're going to take a very, very tiny amount of blood, kind of like a mosquito, and that's going to be enough for them. Another thing that's really cool about vampire bats is that they're highly altruistic. We did mention that bats are super smart and they need each other to survive. They live in these large communities, and vampire bats are no exception. They have been shown in studies that if one bat is starving, their best friend, and it's usually one that they're really good friends with, may regurgitate their food so that their friend who is starving can eat. So it's really sad that the one bat already had to be starving for them to find this out, but it's really cool how altruistic they can be. And this saliva, remember how we were talking about that it makes it thin, it goes from smoothie to juice. That chemical, scientists have been able to figure out what it is, and then they took it to create life-saving medicine for stroke patients. So in order to thin our blood, we used vampire bat technology, which I think is amazing. They also helped us create sonar with their echolocation. So bats are super essential, you guys. And fruit bats, let's talk about the fruit bats. They are unfortunately not found here in the US. I say unfortunately because they're so heckin' cute. I mean, look at the captain over on the left-hand side. He is a flying fox. He's about the size of a house cat with a wingspan of about 4 feet. There are bats that can be a little bit larger than him, like the golden crown flying fox with a wingspan of 6 feet. But fruit bat does not equal big bat. It doesn't necessarily equal mega bat. The ones that have been flying right behind us, they're about this size, the short-tailed fruit bats, and they're also considered fruit bats. One thing that I do like to stress about these guys is that they can sometimes echolocate, but they do not rely on this echolocation. They usually rely more on their sense of smell and their eyesight in order to find really ripe fruit. So that brings me to, because you guys all have all of this knowledge now, so I'm going to see what you guys retained, brings me to my Batman's lunchbox. So I have put together a couple different items in here that Batman may want to eat if he had the diet of a bat. So what kind of things do you guys think might be in here? And if you guys want to send them in the chat, see if any of you guys get any of these items right. And it could be any kind of bat. It doesn't have to be just the fruit bats, for example. Mosquitoes, excellent. So I actually have flying insects in here. Excellent. Thank you so much, Anne. Have a here. Ooh. Mosquitoes, flying insects, scorpions. Oh, yes. More flying insects. I have a scorpion in here. I think I also have a centipede. Great job, centipede. I don't have a fish, but I do have a different kind of meat, and that's going to be another little bat. I have bananas. Excellent. Good job, you guys. I also have grasshoppers in here. Can I get another kind of fruit? One that has a large seed in the middle, making it difficult for other animals to seed disperse this kind of fruit, but bats can do it really well. Avocado, yes, I don't have an avocado in here, but that's a great one. Thank you so much. And then we have mango. Without bats, we may not have mango. And to wash it all down, to drink, what kind of things might we find in here? Blood. Yes, I don't have blood in here, but we might find that if we're a vampire bat. Fruit juice. Yes. What about something that we might drink every single morning? Most of us. Sugared water. Perfect. Water. Something that gives us energy. Coffee. Exactly. We might have coffee. And then at nighttime, whenever we have our chips and salsa at a restaurant, sometimes after a long day, we have a certain drink that has salt around the rim. Tequila. We wouldn't have tequila if it weren't for bats. Pollinator bats that we have down south in a lot of our states that feed on the agave nectar. So we wouldn't have things like tequila, we wouldn't have coffee if it weren't for these super essential bats. Now, we learned about how cool bats are. We know that they're super intelligent. They can solve puzzles. They give us all of these foods, life-saving medicines, things that we use every single day, like soap. And what we are now going to talk about for a little bit is that it's hard out there for a bat. This is actually a picture of Alfie whenever he first came in. This was day 2, actually. His stomach was not as inflated, but he was just schlumped. Like, he was just not a happy bat at the time whenever he first came in. Bats have a couple of different things against them. Number one that we're seeing a lot for our hibernating species is going to be white nose syndrome. Why this only affects hibernating species is because it's an itchy fungus that Pseudogymnoascus destructans will attach to their wingtips, their nose, and it'll make those areas super, super itchy that they have to wake up during hibernation. And then what happens is it's super cold outside, there aren't enough bugs around, and then they starve. They use their fat reserves that are supposed to keep them alive throughout that entire winter. So they end up dying. And this little fungus has been able to kill over 90% of a colony at a time. It's super deadly. It was found in Europe and somehow it made its way here. It was found in a cave in New York And now it's actually moved on to the majority of the United States, but it only affects those hibernating species. There are a lot of researchers out there who are trying to figure out a cure for this, but there are other researchers who say, hey, this has been around in Europe for so long, and some of the bats were able to overcome it. We think that over time, we'll be able to replenish those populations that have been lost. But what we have found at Bat World is that if you find a bat that has white nose syndrome, they can be rehabilitated out of it. If you take that individual, and this is the difficult part, is it usually takes up the entire colony. If you find that individual, you can make sure that they make it through the winter and they'll be healthy enough to return back out into the wild with lots of love, tender love and care, and food. Bats are also facing a lot of loss of habitat. There are a lot of people who love to go into caves. I mean, I do as well, but we need to do so respectfully and carefully because there are lots of organisms living there that are essential to us, essential to the bats. And if you disturb that environment, that can be detrimental to the bats. For example, white nose syndrome. People on our boots, if we wear the same boots from one cave that might have white nose syndrome, and you wear them to the next cave, you are now taking that fungus and introducing it to a cave where it maybe did not have white nose syndrome before. So we have to be really careful about that. Deforestation is also affecting a lot of bats, especially our fruit bats in parts of South America. Exclusion from roosts due to human fear. And that's something that we're seeing here in Mineral Wells. Sometimes a bat may be roosting in a man-made structure, and we don't always want them there. For example, if you have a restaurant downstairs, you don't want to have a bunch of bats roosting upstairs, and we do have humane ways of excluding them, but some people don't do so humanely. And they will use force and deadly chemicals in order to get rid of the bats, but there are good ways to get rid of the bat and rehome them somewhere else. The pet trade and research, which is my major soapbox. There's actually a video that Bat World Sanctuary put together. It's about 15 minutes long and it's on our website if you guys have the time. It talks about bats that are affected by the pet trade specifically. Bats are being leaked into the pet trade and only live maybe 1 to 2 years in most people's care, where these guys can normally live 20 plus years. And then they have predators out there. And this is normal, right? This is not human caused, but hawks, owls, and all of that are all going to be out there. They do also have cats that are trying, I mean, cats, again, it's not their fault. I love cats, but cats are little hunters and they love things that move quickly, things that are furry and that move fast, and they'll snatch them out. And sorry, I'm over here just like smacking my lips. I'm gonna grab a little bit of water. So cats will catch bats out of thin air because they're just so good at it. And we have seen a lot of bats that have come in with cuts, and usually they can be rehabilitated, but others like Gabriel, who was found by a dog, cannot make it back out into the wild. So the best thing we can do is keep our cats inside to make sure that other bats and other small animals stay safe. And number one on that list of predators and things that hurt bats are going to be humans. More than anything, we're the ones that are going to be hurting them by spreading those diseases back and forth to caves and by taking away their habitat. But how can you help? There's a couple of different ways. And there's one really cool one that Celeste actually showed me. She participates in this one. You can do community science projects. And I'm going to pull up that website for you guys to see if you guys are interested in participating. You can also make your town smarter. Things like this. I don't have to be the one speaking for you, but maybe now that you have all of this bat knowledge, you can put together an educational booth or a presentation for your community groups. You can go green, plant native gardens that are going to attract native bugs, which then are going to be eaten by the insectivorous bats. With this, maybe using less pesticides to make sure there's enough food for the bats. You can also build a bat house. So I am going to pull up a little website for you guys because I just think it's so cool that this is available to you guys in and around LA. It's this Backyard Bats program. And this is just so cute. But what they do is they put a microphone essentially, and they put it up in your backyard if you guys know that you guys have bats in the area, and they monitor how many bats are around there, what kind of bats are coming by, so that they can monitor the roosts and see how they're changing over time. So if you guys know that you guys have bats in your area, this is a really cool way to help them out, to make sure that we do have more bats taking care of those mosquitoes. So there's lots of information for you guys to read on here, but I just think it's a really cool way to get involved. So I'm going to close out of that one over here. Another way you can get involved and help the bats in your area is by building those bat houses. We have free plans if you guys are good with woodworking on our website. So you guys can put up your own bat house if you know you have bats nearby. As they are excluded from building that they may not be allowed to be in, and by allowed, I mean like a restaurant or a boutique who maybe just doesn't want bats around, and that's okay. Those bats that have been excluded are now homeless and looking for a new place to stay. And if they happen to pass by your home and you were super hospitable and you build them a little house, they might want to stay and have a maternity colony. And those maternity colonies are super important because they're going to help make more babies, because these guys are super slow reproducing animals. Our way of doing this was our bat castle on our property. So Bat World Sanctuary is near Mineral Wells, Texas, where there are buildings that are made of sandstone and brick that are over 100 years old. And the bats love it. They're like, hey, this is a makeshift cave and a lot of these are abandoned. Let's make a home here. But that was great and dandy for a while until the city of Mineral Wells started to come alive again. And more businesses were created in those old historic buildings. So a lot of the building owners have actually reached out to us and we've helped them conduct humane exclusions. And then we put up a bat castle for the bats of Mineral Wells to find, which is modeled after those same old buildings in Mineral Wells. So hopefully they will find this castle, which can hold over 100,000 bats, and they will live there. So far, no one has inhabited it yet, which is really sad, but we are hoping that they will find it very soon. We've put up a couple other bat houses in the area so that they can slowly start making their way this way where they know they can be safe and sound. And the building in the very top, that is the old Wild Sanctuary building that Miss Amanda Lawler used to clean up all the time because it had over 100,000 bats in that building. And this picture from down below is an actual picture of a bunch of bats that used to live there. This was a maternity colony. We did have to exclude the bats out of there because it became a death trap at some point with some elevator shafts. But the bats have now started to play musical buildings around Mineral Wells and they have spread out colonies. So we're hoping that they will come this way and live in the bat castle. But that just goes right back to bats are being excluded out of buildings, and that's okay. It happens. There's humane ways to do it, and this was done humanely. But if you put up a bat house, it might give those homeless bats a new place to go. Now, because there are a lot of bats here in Texas and in California, you guys might eventually come into contact with a bat. And a lot of people don't know what to do if they find a bat inside of their house or on the ground. If you guys find a bat inside of your house and they're flying, the best thing to do at that point is to open up all your windows and your front door, close all of the doors into any bedrooms, just to make sure that they don't find their way in there. Turn off the lights and then shine a light outside of whatever exit you're trying to get them to find. Now, the trouble is turning off the lights. So I say that, but with caution. You never want to lose sight of the bat because a lot of bats are crevice roosting and they might find a nice little home to hide in for a little bit. So keeping the lights on is perfectly okay if you can't dim them down enough to where you can still see the bat. But what if you guys find a bat on the ground? A bat on the ground does not mean that they're rabid. A bat on the ground just means that they maybe suffered a wing break or they're dehydrated. There are a lot of different reasons why a bat might be found on the ground. You still never want to touch the bat barehanded.
So you found a bat.
Here are instructions for that.
Or outside, you're grounded. Take them into a box so that you can get them to a qualified rehabilitator. First, you're going to want to use either or thick gloves. You're never going to want to touch a bat barehanded. So here we have our special actress Cookie, and I'm going to contain her using this apple. Gently, like as if she was a hot potato in the oven. I'm going to scoop her up, and the entire hot potato, all in all, is going to go into a box. Now, this box has no gaps in it. It's all sealed with tape all around the sides. And I'm going to provide her a shallow dish of water that I've already prepared, but nothing else. No food, just the towel that we contained her with, the dish of water, and we're going to close that up. And bats can sneak out of holes that are 1/4 to 1/2 of an inch in width. So we are going to seal that completely and no holes, no big gaps. What you're going to do now is you're going to call Bat World Sanctuary at 940-325-3404, and we will lead you from there to contacting the rehabilitator.
And we try to keep this video very short so that people with short attention spans can still get something out of it. But there is a little bit more information. If you guys actually do find a bat, you do not want to add large air holes, because remember, they can sneak out of those tiny little holes. So if you very carefully poke small holes, that is okay. You also want to bring the box inside to a quiet room that's not going to be disturbed by children or pets. Whenever you call us, you can call that phone number in the video. You can call us directly, because we do have a large network with people in California. So even though we're over here, we can't physically go get the bat. We do have lots of people in the general LA area that can help you guys with that bat and get them to a qualified rehabilitator so they can take care of them and then send them back out into the wild. You don't want to call animal control, because a lot of the time they are not taught how to take care of bats, and what will usually happen is they will just take them back and euthanize them because they don't know what else to do after that. Thankfully, in this area, we actually have a lot of animal control officers who have trained with us, and what they do as soon as they find a bat is that they just call us, and then we go and pick up the bat and take care of it from there. So if you find a bat on the ground, get them in a box while using gloves. That is super, super important, and I'm going to stress that a little bit more, because most bats that you're going to find are not going to be sick. Less than 1% of bats will ever contract the rabies disease. However, because that chance is not 100% zero, you don't want to put yourself at risk. And even if the bat is perfectly healthy, if you touch that bat barehanded, you have now given them a death sentence, because they have to be tested for rabies, which requires for them to be killed. So you're not helping the bat by touching them with your bare hands. Please, please, please use a thick towel or thicker gardening gloves to help that bat. Otherwise, you have to go get really expensive post-rabies exposure shots, and the bat has to be killed regardless. So that's the best way to help them out, is just protect yourself and protect the bat. But that kind of concludes all of the major information that I wanted to share with you guys today. The main message that I want you guys to take home, though, is next time that you're eating a bar of chocolate, next time you brush your teeth or washing your hands, smelling your coffee in the morning, pause for a second to thank a bat who was able to give that to you. And if you ever find a bat in need, the resources are out there. And just calling you guys to action to help educate others, because that's the main way that we are going to help protect these bats, is to help others understand how essential they are, how important they are to us even, and just the general ecosystem as a whole. So thank you so much for being here today to learn about bats, and hopefully this doesn't stop here and you will help us continue spreading the knowledge. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jessica. That was so great. I learned so much, and I loved meeting all your little bat friends over there at Bat World. I am going to be sending a follow-up email to folks with some of the resources that Jessica mentioned, as well as a survey for y'all, to a chance for y'all to give us your feedback. I'll pop that link in the chat right now. Open it up. Please take a chance to take that survey. And if anybody has to go, please, you're welcome to go, but we're gonna spend the next 10 minutes or so answering a few of your questions. All right. So I saw the question come in, Jessica, and you spoke to this a little bit. The question is, do most states have a rehab facility for bats? And I was wondering if you could just expand a little bit on the network that the Bat World Sanctuary has.
Absolutely. Yes. So let me take a step back on that network. We do actually have it available to everyone online. You guys can actually go to batworld.org, click on Found a Bat, and then locate a rescuer, put in your zip code, and then it'll tell you who is near you that rehabs bats and the mileage, like how far away they are from you. So it's really cool. And I invite you guys to do this as soon as you guys finish the program today, because you never know when you'll need that information. But the answer is no, every single state does not have a rehabilitator. Number one reason is because it's difficult to train people to take care of that. It doesn't usually pay to be a bat rehabilitator. So it's usually veterinarians or conservationists, zoologists who have taken this up in addition to their normal job, and they just do this on the side just to help those bats. So number one is there's just not enough of us out there. And we're hoping to grow this a little bit more. We do have classes that we provide online where you can be certified and receive a certain amount of hours. You can also find information on our website on how to get started to be a rehabilitator. Number one, you have to find someone who's already doing it and shadow them for a little bit. But the reason number two why it is not available in all states is the laws for that particular state. For example, right now in Michigan, you cannot rehabilitate bats at all. If you find a bat, the protocol is for you to leave it on the ground and to walk away and pretend you never saw anything, which is really sad because sometimes those bats are orphaned. Maybe they were born with a deformity. We actually had a bat this year who was born without some of his fingers, and as soon as he was able to fly, he fell and then had to hop a couple of blocks on the hot pavement until he was found. He was a little juvenile. He had just gone through his first summer. So that's why we knew that he was born that way, was because of the way things had healed over. If that bat was found in Michigan, that would be it for them. They're not rabid. They are not sick, but we can't do anything about it in Michigan. But we're trying to change that right now. We actually do have a campaign on our website that you can read and get more information on that and how we can make a difference. So hopefully, fingers crossed, in the future, we can make that change in that state and in further states. So sorry for the long answer for that one, but
yeah, awesome that you guys are working towards changing that, because that's really too bad. Another question came in, and I think it's really interesting to consider, like, why the EPA or like public health departments don't use bats as a way to prevent insect infestations for crops or disease transmission for mosquitoes. And is your organization, do you do any research, or do you have a platform at all to like influence policy around the importance of bats?
Yeah, so we don't do any research at our facility. That's just not something that we do. We usually do the rehabilitation, the rescue, the conservation part of things. There are researchers out there who might be doing this. That would be really cool. But bats, you can't really control them. And so that's the main reason why they can't be used as a tool. But we do speak with a lot of farmers in the area, people who want to make sure that their organic crops are protected. And we help them and guide them through putting up bat houses. There's actually a peach farm over here in Mineral Wells that has 7 bat houses that are inhabited. And they used to have all of their crops be eaten by grasshoppers. That's what we have in this area. That's just like, but ever since they put up those bat houses and they became inhabited, they haven't had that huge loss of product. So there isn't an official way you can use them, I guess. And that's why big organizations haven't jumped on it. But it is something that we do recommend, and why programs like this are important, because maybe people here didn't know how important bats are towards helping with our crops, and we can help spread that word a little bit further.
Awesome. Yeah, and going off that about the bat houses, there was a follow-up question on bat houses. And the question is, do you have a medium-sized bat house or shelter house in case the bat colony grows? So like, what would be the next steps after you find bats inside the bat house? And then what if the colony like outgrows that space?
Yeah, so if we're talking about our bat house here, the bat castle on the property, we do have our main bat castle, and we have extra bat houses around the bat castle, and we're putting up even more in the surrounding areas. So what you would do at that point, if you have a completely full condo of bats, is you would put another bat house nearby where they can find it, and that way they can have essentially two separate small colonies that all stemmed from one. And we actually see this happening in our town of Mineral Wells, especially with that one big wild colony that we had to exclude. They kind of just broke up into a bunch of smaller colonies in the buildings surrounding. So if you just put up another home nearby, they will find it and start, just inhabiting everywhere that they can. But they, again, they're super slowly reproducing, so you won't, or you shouldn't see the colony grow that much from one year to another, unless they tell their friends, and then their friends come and find it as well.
Yeah, and it sounds like they self-regulate their colony size. Like if they outgrow it, they'll have to go find. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. And then I think last question we'll take is, you explained a few of the like negative impacts that humans are having on bats. Are there other concerns or predators that bats are facing in the wild?
Yeah, the main ones are going to be, well, humans are a lot of it, right? With wind turbines, that's a huge one. Us bringing disease from one place to another, eating bats. We also speak against that. It is in some cultures still used, and that's kind of where it becomes a difficult subject, because it's not our place to tell a certain culture what to do and how to do things. But it has become a problem in the resort world. Whenever you go somewhere to a different country and you're staying in this big fancy resort, they will serve fruit bat as a delicacy, even if you're not part of their culture. So predators, humans, but house cats, that's going to be a huge one. And cats live longer anyways whenever you leave them indoors, because they're not going to get run over by cars, be poisoned by something that they're eating that they shouldn't be. But also they're not going to hurt lots and lots of bats. That's the main one that we see whenever we have a bat come in with injuries, is that they were injured by a feral cat or an outdoor cat. Hawks, owls, snakes, foxes, raccoons, all of those things also hurt bats. The one that I don't think about that often, which actually happens a lot, are blue jays. They don't eat bats, but if they're very territorial. So if you have a tree where a little eastern or western red bat is trying to roost with her babies, and a blue jay wants to hang out on that same tree, they will literally knock the bat out of the tree and sometimes hurt them in the process. So it's hard out there for a bat. Pretty much all of those larger animals are going to hurt them. They're tiny. They don't have many ways of defending themselves other than their tiny little mouths. So they're not very scary to most other larger animals. Lots of predators out there.
Yeah. Well, it's hard out there for a bat. But I hope that folks also had some takeaways with the ways that they can help support bat conservation. So thank you so much for sharing those, Jessica. And thank you so much to all our participants for attending today. I am going to, like I mentioned, send a follow-up email, so you'll have some resources, that phone number for Bat World Sanctuary if you do have a bat encounter. I'll also send over a follow-up survey, which I invite folks to fill out and share your feedback with us. And lastly, I just want to mention that we did record this training, and so if you are called to share it with friends or students or colleagues, it will be posted and available on our YouTube channel by the end of this week. So thanks again, Jessica, so much for being here, and thanks to all our participants today.
Thank you guys so much. I really had a great time. The way I think about it is this is what I like to do anyway, is get to talk about bats. So I just appreciate you guys being here to share some of this knowledge with me. Thank you guys.
All right, have a great afternoon. Bye.